request all our learners and participants to please keep their mics muted. Thank you so much. Thank you. I express my gratitude and appreciation to our honored guest, Swami Sarvapriyananda, and the distinguished panel of experts, discussants, Professor Reena Banerjee, Professor Soma Sen, Ms. Jahnabi Phookan. Has she joined? Yes, I can. Yes. Ms. Jahnabi Phookan, Mr. Prabhat Bezbaruah, for taking out their valuable time to join us here. I think we are all here. Yes. On behalf of IGNOU and Kolkata Regional Center, I thank you all. Honorable Vice Chancellor, IGNOU, Professor Nageshwar Rao, Honorable Pro Vice Chancellors, IGNOU. Please keep your mics muted. Honorable Pro Vice Chancellors, IGNOU, other respected members of IGNOU fraternity, senior colleagues from IGNOU headquarters, New Delhi, regional directors of all regional centers across India and abroad, academicians, coordinators, counselors from IGNOU study centers and learner support centers, invited guests who have gathered here from across 13 districts of West Bengal, friends, IGNOU learners, IGNOU alumni who have joined us here as an expression of their support and solidarity of IGNOU's cause of service and its tremendous potential to revolutionize and democratize education in India. This is Dr. Sujata Datta Hazarika, Senior Regional Director, and it is my proud privilege to coordinate this webinar on behalf of IGNOU from Kolkata Regional Center. Ladies and gentlemen, IGNOU recently celebrated the 37th convocation and awarded 3,08,605 degrees, diplomas, and certificates to learners all over India. In the Kolkata region alone, 11,475 learners received their degrees, diplomas, and certificates. Indira Gandhi National Open University is a central university, the largest university in the world in terms of enrollment, and the proud recipient of the A++ award rating by NAC. IGNOU was established by the Government of India through an Act of Parliament in 1985. As an autonomous institution under the Ministry of Education, Government of India, the university has its jurisdiction spread over the entire country and has been mandated to expand opportunities for quality higher education through technology-enabled open and distance learning. As a forerunner of digitized education through a powerful technology-enabled open and distance learning system and online education infrastructure, IGNOU has created a phenomenal, innovative model of education that is beyond barriers of age, gender, community, religion, etc., etc. It has significantly contributed to the vast literacy rate of India through its galloping gross enrollment ratio and quality-intensive educational programs. I would like to invite Professor Om Prakash Sharma, Director of the National Center for Innovation in Distance Education at the Indira Gandhi National Open University, New Delhi, to give the welcome remarks. Professor Om Prakash Sharma is a senior educationist, innovator, and science communicator with rich experience of 35 years in science popularization, science teachers training, research in science education through open and distance mode. He has taken several innovative initiatives for effective teaching, learning, and supporting students by using ICT. He has been promoting innovation, entrepreneurship, and startup among the students of IGNOU with the impressive agenda for outreach activities and programs. He is publishing a popular science magazine, Vigyan Aapke Liye, since 2001 and Innovate India for the last several years. He has designed and developed the popular science web portal World of Science. He has been awarded and honored, which includes 3 national awards, 2 times by the President of India for popularizing science and technology. Thank you, Professor Sharma, for being here, and you're requested to deliver the welcome note on behalf of IGNOU.
Thank you, Dr. Sujata Datta Hajarika. First of all, I would like to convey my greetings to all on this International Women's Day. Indeed, it is my pleasure and privilege to be part of this event, very prestigious and important event, and to welcome our chief guest, eminent person, respected Swami Sarvapriyananda ji. I welcome you on behalf of IGNOU, and we are really happy to have you today in the evening in India with all of us, and we'll be happy to listen to you, delighted to know new ways of living the life. I welcome you on behalf of the university. I also welcome the special guest on this occasion, Professor Banerjee, Head of Immunology and Regenerative Medicine, University of Calcutta. We are really privileged to have you, Madam, on this occasion, and will be very happy to listen to your views. I also welcome Professor Soma, a social worker from St. Joe's State University, USA, to have you today on this International Women's Day will certainly be enlightening to all of us. I welcome Ms. Jahnabi Phookan, member of Handloom Committee, Ministry of Textiles. It's a really very good moment to all of us to have you, madam, and to listen to you. Our students and all of us will be really grateful for listening your views and your experience. I also welcome Mr. Prabhat, Bezbaruah, Director of BOKAHOLA Tea Estate, former Chairman Tea Board. Having all such eminent experts in the overall guidance of respected Swami Sarvapriyananda ji will be certainly a great evening to all of us on this very important occasion, International Women's Day, when we will be talking about the gender, how gender being taken borderless for the innovation, entrepreneurship, creativity, and how it is contributing towards the growth and the country and the world as a whole. We know half of the population, almost half of the population in the world is women. They are now not only serving in different parts, they are reaching the new heights and paving the ways for the new generations to come, how they can contribute towards the real-time growth that we are witnessing right from the ocean to the air. The women are flying the jets and the aircrafts, and they are in the submarines, they are on the ground, they are in the space, NASA, ISRO, everywhere we can see the power of women. Likely, IGNOU is also contributing towards empowerment of IGNOU, the women, in a big way. In fact, I would like to share with you almost half, that's around 49% of our students belong to the female category. So that's a big thing. Sometimes it becomes 50% and sometimes 51 also, that we have seen over the years. But on an average, if we see 49% is from the girls and women's side. So that way we can see how IGNOU is also contributing towards empowering the girl child and the women, housewives and other things. It is my privilege to welcome all the participants, also different study centers, regional center of IGNOU, other regional centers, and if some are in, some have joined from the headquarters, I welcome you also. All the students who have taken time to join at this time, it's also good for me to welcome you all. Just I would like to share with you some facts about the university IGNOU. As Dr. Sujata Datta has highlighted, we have presence in many countries. Even in the country, we are reaching out to almost all parts of the country through about 57 regional centers, which are owned by the university, which are our own regional centers, having our own staff. Regional directors are heading those all regional centers, like a regional center Kolkata. Kolkata is one of them, and they are being supported by more than 2,000. That's more than 2,000 study centers spread all over we call them learner support center, spread all over the country. And these learner support centers, they are providing all kind of support to these students. And we have overseas region, overseas study centers also in around 15 nations. So that way, IGNOU has presence not only in the all part of the country, but it is having presence in across the globe. And through these all regional centers, we are trying to reach out to the unreached. Unreached means those who, because of one or other reason, could not continue their higher education through conventional system. They are now with us. They are continuing their education, and now the trend has changed that most of the students are coming to IGNOU by their choice, because either they are working somewhere or they want to pursue something else along with their studies. And because the policies which now we know, the National Education Policy 2020 brought out by the government of India, that also permits this kind of arrangement, that while doing any study anywhere in conventional system or working somewhere, you can continue your higher education through open and distance learning, including the online learning. So IGNOU is providing that kind of flexible uh, doorstep education, doorstep higher education in qualitative way. Lot of technology is being used for that purpose. Technology is being used for right from the um, reaching out to them in terms of making them aware of the facilities of IGNOU, the provisions of IGNOU, features of IGNOU, and, making the admission system online, and then providing online virtual classrooms and all kind of supports uh, for the open and distance learner, along with the online programs also. Several online programs IGNOU is offering, and certain MOOCs programs, massive open online courses are also being offered in a variety of disciplines and areas as per the need and choice of the pupil. Because I would like to share with you around more than 300 programs IGNOU is offering, online programs, open and distance learning program, and they are having uh, each program has around 20 or 15 courses. So that way, that uh, uh, amount of number of the programs and courses are being offered through 57 regional centers and more than 2,000 learner support centers. So this is a way the IGNOU is helping the people of the country, and in fact people of the globe, to have quality education at their own pace, place, and time. That is the beauty. And this along with these all, now with the implementation of national education policy, many new features have been added. I would like to highlight that technology intervention is a one thing, because all over the world technology is being used in a big way. Because in India is a diverse country in terms of languages and other cultures and those things. So university is taking care of those all things also. We are now trying to provide education in the regional language, in the mother tongue also. That is a great initiative, because we have seen the students who belongs to the rural areas or do not have command in the English or other languages. They require education, higher education in their own language. For that purpose, university has taken this great initiative to provide higher education in their own language, in the regional language. And this is increasing the enrollment also. Students are coming more in number. And at this time, I would like to tell you, IGNOU is contributing in a big way in the government of India's gross development ratio, because IGNOU's contribution is much more than the conventional system. Uh, like this, IGNOU is not only imparting this higher education degree diplomas, IGNOU is also empowering students for innovation, startup, and entrepreneurship development. And you can see the day which we are celebrating today, International Women's Day, that is also focusing on the innovation and startup entrepreneurship. Because unless we involve this great power of women in this all innovation and startup entrepreneurship, we will not be able to achieve the target which our honorable Prime Minister and the government of India is now visualizing, India to be Vikasit Bharat by 2047. That can be achieved only when all of us, including women and female, male, female, all are contributing equally. And the day being celebrated today, not only in IGNOU, but throughout the country now, this year it is the focusing on the innovation, creativity, entrepreneurship, and startup. I'm thankful to our regional center, Kolkata, also that they have taken a very important topic, taking gender through the borderless lens of innovation, creativity, enterprise building. And we know, if we look at the data of the country, in 2015 there were around 400 startups in the country. But now the kind of ecosystem, innovation startup ecosystem which the government has developed, as a result of that, now there are more than 1 lakh startups. In fact, it is 1.11 lakh startups in the country. So that is the pace of increase of these startups. In that too, it is important to highlight on this that 7% of them are managed by female CEOs or the founders. So that's a big thing. The day is not far that this 47 will be more than 50%, because now we have seen, even in our case also, the center which I am heading, we are trying to encourage our students to come towards the innovation, entrepreneurship in startup. A number of girl students, they are coming with new ideas. They are trying to set up their own enterprises and startups, and they are getting funding also from the government, from the other sources. So that is a kind of a situation in the country and also in a university. And I'm sure this kind of program which are being organized across the regional center in IGNOU, they will further motivate our girl students to come forward for finding innovative solution to the problem of the society, to set up these startups in different areas wherever the need is there. And today's deliberation, which I'm sure, which we will be listening from our eminent experts, they will also enlighten us, guide us, how our students and we as a university can contribute more effectively in a better way, to motivate, inspire, and encourage our female students, particularly towards innovation, entrepreneurship, and startup. And certainly, it will be our that great privilege and matter of pleasure to listen to respected Swami Sarvapriyananda. Your views and your guidance will certainly help us in a big way. So I would like to once again welcome you all the eminent guests, participants, participating students, and the faculty members from our study center, regional centers, and we'll be happy to listen to our guests. So thank you very much, and once again, welcome to you all. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Please do not.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, please close your mics and do not put it on until you are summoned. So just hold on. A short note on how this webinar was conceptualized, so that we can take our discussion and our lecture further. It is, of course, a proud privilege and opportunity to conceptualize and ideate this webinar on behalf of IGNOU. the webinar, which talks of talking gender through the borderless lens of innovation, creativity, and enterprise building, was conceptualized keeping two issues in mind. First, IGNOU as an university, as Professor Sharma has just mentioned, has a huge impact in terms of gross enrollment ratio. IGNOU has consistently served the education aspirations with a focus on inclusive education that transcends all barriers of age, gender, community, religion, reaching out to the unreached students in the prisons, distant, inaccessible locations, physically disabled military personnels, scheduled caste and scheduled tribes, transgender communities. The extended outreach capacity is enormous. With a huge enrollment of learners who are women, as Professor Sharma just mentioned, women who come from both urban professional classes as well as from backward classes and grassroots. We are a university which is especially sensitive to addressing the concerns of marginalized sections. Our activities are oriented towards motivation and upliftment of society by democratizing education through skill building and training of professionals. This is one of the issues where women come up in large numbers. The second issue is, of course, the initiative which makes us a part of Ministry of Education, and the Government of India through the National Education Policy has initiated the Institution Innovation Council for selected higher educational institutions, and IGNOU has been selected as one of it to encourage, inspire, and nurture students by supporting them to work with new ideas and transform their ideas into prototypes while they are in their formative years. We are, of course, very pleased to inform you that Regional Center Kolkata, with the active support of IGNOU Institutional Innovation Council under Professor Sharma and on the aegis of the Institution Innovation Council, Ministry of Education, has an active innovation support system for IGNOU learners. So if we are to examine gender through the lens of innovation and entrepreneurship, we are once again confronted with Swami Vivekananda's ideals of universalism, service, spiritualizing daily life, and practical activities. These values of connected existence, our borderless identities, make it very difficult to fathom the real world of differences, competitions, exploitation, and domination. We are privileged to have Swami Sarvapriyananda, President of Vedanta Society, New York, here to open our eyes once again in this. So once a path of realization of the fundamental truth is laid by Swami Sarvapriyananda, we will open the floor for our distinguished guests for some groundbreaking realities about women in innovation and enterprise building. Do these man-made social constructs actually matter? And how can we transcend these differences that exist to create a society that is sustainable, desirable, shareable with all, and also achievable too, given the limitations of our social and human resources? What role can education fulfill in this connected existence? Swami Sarvapriyananda, my deepest regard and appreciation for sparing your invaluable time to be here with us, to revive, to recall, to revisit Swami Vivekananda for the youth and all who are eagerly waiting for your insights on Swamiji's ideals of nation building to science, innovation, and enterprise building. Swami Sarvapriyananda has been the minister and spiritual leader of Vedanta Society of New York since January 2017. He joined the Ramakrishna Mutt in 1994 and received sannyasa in 2004. He served as an acharya, teacher of the Monastic Probationers Training Center at Belur Mutt, India, Kolkata. He also served in various capacities in different educational institutions of Ramakrishna Mission in India, and he is was the assistant minister of the Vedanta Society of Southern California during 2019 and 2020, he was a inaugural fellow of the Harvard University Divinity School. He is a well-known speaker on Vedanta, and his talks are extremely popular globally via the internet. He has been a speaker on various prestigious forums like the TEDx, the SAN, the Google Talk. He has also been invited to speak at several universities, including Harvard. So Swami has engaged in dialogues with many eminent thinkers such as Deepak Chopra, Robert Spira, Rick Archer, David Chalmers, and Sam Harris, who are all eminent scientists in their own field. He has played a prominent role in organizing and participating in various interfaith panels and seminars, including speaking at the World Parliament of Religion in Toronto in 2018 and at the United Nations headquarters in New York. Thank you, Shamiji, for being here with us. I have personally followed you for many years now, and you've been such an inspiration. Thank you so much for being here with us. Will you please deliver your address?
Namaskar, and thank you, Dr. Sujata Datta Hajarika, for having me in this program on this prestigious occasion, the International Women's Day. Namaskars also to Dr. O.P. Sharma, to other respected members of IGNOU, faculty members, esteemed members of the panel who have gathered, this international panel, very distinguished panel who have gathered online. Namaskars to you also, and also to the students and guests who are here today. So this is the International Women's Day. I think it's good to take a step back and take a historical perspective at how dramatically the world has changed, the situation of women has changed over the last 100 to 150 years. I am here in the Vedanta Society of New York, and which was founded by Swami Vivekananda in 1894. Very close to this place is a Central Park, and I usually go for walks there. One day I saw new statues. There are many statues in Central Park. They were putting up new statues. This was just a few years ago during the COVID years. So new statues were being put up. I was curious, what are the statues? And it turned out those were the statues of the suffragettes, the three important suffragettes, those who fought for the women's right to vote. So their statues were being put up. The reason was that the authorities in Central Park suddenly realized that in this huge park, more than 700 acres, so many statues are there, there is not one single statue of a woman. That the only female statues were like Alice in Wonderland, Mother Goose, things like that, which are fictional characters. So it's very good that they put up these statues. Let me read to you. See, this dramatic change which has happened over the last 100, 150 years. Throughout history, we read about women who rose to the top of society. They were always queens and, important people. But the general mass of women, for centuries and millennia in a patriarchal society, they were not at all, they did not have the equal rights and privileges with men. Let me read out from this book one small passage. This is a very famous book, Sapiens, by the historian Harari, Yuval Noah Harari. One small paragraph where he's saying that yes, there have been queens, but what about the society under them? They were all patriarchal societies. So he's giving the example. Elizabeth I of England, queen, a woman, she was the head of England. But he points out, throughout Elizabeth's 45-year reign, 45 years she was queen, all members of parliament were men. All officers in the Royal Navy and Army were men. All judges and lawyers were men. All bishops and archbishops in the church were men. All theologians and priests were men. All doctors and surgeons were men. All professors, teachers in all universities and colleges were men, and more so, all students were men in all those colleges and universities. All the mayors and officers and sheriffs in the towns were men, and almost all, overwhelmingly, all the writers were men. All architects, poets, philosophers, painters, musicians, and scientists were almost always only men. This was the condition of society, not just in England under Elizabeth I, but almost all societies across the world, except a few matriarchal societies. Almost all societies across the world were overwhelmingly patriarchal. If you come to India, Swami Vivekananda himself has said the two great causes of the national downfall of India were the oppression of the masses and the neglect of women. the oppression of the masses and neglect of women. Swami Vivekananda's program of national awakening and uplift had these two prongs: the radical egalitarian approach to the masses of India for equality and opportunity, and for the uplift of women, especially education and equal rights for women. In fact, one of the reasons he brought a number of Western disciples, Nivedita, especially because she was an educationist, Sister Christine and others, and inspired Sharola Ghosh and others also for starting women's education in India. So that way he was behind some of the pioneering efforts for starting women's education in India. As late as 1950-51, I was reading this book, Joseph Campbell, who was a noted scholar of mythology here in New York. He visited India along with Swami Nikhilanandaji, who was a very senior monk of our order, and he wrote a very interesting and critical book about India, in which one of the points of criticism was, this is 1950-51, that in all the big cities, he visited Delhi, he visited Banaras, he visited Calcutta. He says, nowhere on the streets in public life do you see any women. Now, let us see, in these last 75 years after independence, look at the tremendous change. This allows us to appreciate the tremendous change that has taken place in the condition of women, in the position and status of women all over the world, and especially in India. As Dr. Sharma just mentioned, in every sphere of life now, whatever the historian mentioned, whether it is at the head of the government, we have a woman as the president of our country in India. We have, and by the way, in contrast, it's not the place to make any political statement, but one thing I noticed about 2 elections back when Hillary Clinton was contesting against Donald Trump. She lost the election for a number of reasons, but I noticed one unfortunate thing among Americans here: a resistance to having a woman as the president of the USA. So you see, in India, we have not only had, we have a president, a woman as a president, we have had women as prime ministers and chief ministers, but also at every level of administration, at every level of law and order, in education, in medicine, in science and technology, in the armed forces, in business, at every level. So this is really a great achievement. I'm talking about something that has already been achieved. And we should stop on this International Women's Day and take a look back at what has been achieved, and then only build upon it and go forward to complete the work which has been started. So now switching tracks to Swami Vivekananda. When Swami Vivekananda brought Sister Nivedita to India, Sister Nivedita took her first look at India. She had heard a lot about India, the glories of ancient India and all from Swami Vivekananda, and she had fallen in love with India, but the idea of India. When she first saw India from the ship, she rushed to Swami Vivekananda and said, Swamiji, how peaceful, how wonderful this country, how peaceful it is. And Swami Vivekananda scolded her. He said, no, this is the peace of the grave. The people are colonized under, they were under the British at that time. People are starving, are illiterate, are superstitious. And so that is peaceful just because there's no other way, nothing else to do. There is no higher hope or aspiration in life. So that peace I do not want. What Swami Vivekananda wanted was to rise from this so-called peace of tamoguna, tamas, to activity. I think if Swami Vivekananda had seen India today, he would actually been happy. Many people say we have such tremendous problems in India, but one must take a historical look. What has been achieved in the last 100 years. I know I talked to some senior Swamijis of the Ramakrishna Mission who are much older than me, who have seen pre-independence days. And they all say that modern society, what we have in India, is actually much better than the society they grew up in 70, 80 years ago. So we have made positive progress. We are rising from tamas into rajas, into dynamism and activity and energy, yes, that leads to its own problems. But problems of prosperity are far better than problems of poverty. Problems of plenty are far better than problems of poverty. I tell people in this country, in the United States, that this country, every 5 years, if you come to this country, you will find, in Hindi, we have a phrase, 19-20, a little better or a little worse. It will be sometimes better, sometimes worse, a little better, a little worse. But every 5 years, if you go to India now, you will find a new India. India is changing. It is in dramatic transformation, economically, infrastructure-wise, but also socially, especially in the status of women. So this is what has already been achieved. What Vivekananda gave, let me just mention in a couple of sentences his commitment not only to women's uplift, but also in general his commitment to education. Because after all, he was a monk, he was a religious figure. What connection does he have with Women's Day or with education? But he has a very deep connection. For example, there is this very interesting incident when Vivekananda was coming to the West on the ship from India to United States. Actually, he came to Canada first and then to US to attend the World Parliament of Religions in 1893. On the ship, he met Tata. So Jamshedji Tata was going to coming to the United States for business opportunities. Now on this ship, at that time, remember, Vivekananda was not well known. So when on the ship, this young unknown Hindu sannyasi and this Parsi businessman, they got talking. And what were they talking about? They were talking about the future of higher education in India. Amazing. Look at the vision of these two persons. Swami Vivekananda suggested to Tata that there should be an institute for higher learning, for science and technology research in India. And many years later, Tata writes to Vivekananda, and this letter is available. If you go to the Tata's website, you will see the letter from Jamshedji Tata to Swami Vivekananda. That on the ship, if you remember, you had mentioned an institute for science and technology education. And I'm seized of the idea. I want to establish such an institution. And someone has commented TIFR was made after that. No, not TIFR. The Indian Institute of Science in Bangalore. So, and the history is also very interesting. He wrote to Vivekananda, you should come and take charge of it and be the director. But of course, Vivekananda did not come. He passed away when he was he was only 39 years old. He passed away in 1902. Tata also did not live to see. The history is also very interesting and instructive. Tata also did not live to see the establishment of that institute. He gave the land. He collected the money, and the Maharaja of Mysore gave the land. But the British government said natives do not have any need of higher science and technology education. So the British government did not give permission. It was Sister Nivedita who fought for it in India, and then she took it to London to the British Parliament, and then she got permission to establish what was at first known as Tata Institute. Even now in Bangalore, if you go, the auto wallahs there will call it Tata Institute. So that is the Indian Institute of Science. So in this way, whether it is women's education in Calcutta, whether it is the future of science education in India, there is so many ways you can trace it back to Vivekananda. Now, the message of Vivekananda going forward, a philosophy, a higher spiritual philosophy which we can all adopt as administrators, as teachers, as students. We can all adopt this philosophy. This is what I want to place before you and then wrap up. Sister Nivedita, in her introduction to the complete works of Swami Vivekananda, she has said, is Gita, Upanishads, Vedanta, they were all there, already there long before Vivekananda, and they would have continued to be there even if Vivekananda had not come. So what is the unique contribution of Vivekananda? And then she says in very soaring, sublime words, she has written in the introduction, Complete Works of Vivekananda, introduction by Sister Nivedita. She writes that the significance of Swami Vivekananda's teaching, the crowning point of Swami Vivekananda's teaching was this, that the one and the many are the same reality. There's a very cryptic language, a very deep philosophical language. One and the many are the same reality. One means the divine which we are trying to attain, and the many means this world which we live in. Now, a dualistic approach will be there is a God who is in heaven, separate from this world. And so you see, it leads to a split in our spiritual life. This is my secular world, this is my job, this is my family, this is my work life, my personal life, and my spiritual life, in the temple, in the mosque, or in meditation hall. That is my spiritual life. Splitting spirituality from life. And the problem with this is, when the demands of life are so much, it takes up so much time and energy, and mental energy, your work, your family, very little is left over for spiritual practice. And the opposite, life itself, if you remove spirituality from it, you divide like this is my secular life, this is my spiritual life, then this bulk of my life will seem meaningless, pointless. Why am I doing it? After some amount of maturity comes, you feel you're trapped. It's pointless, it's meaningless. Why am I doing it? So Vivekananda said, one and the many are the same reality. That divinity which you are seeking, that God, that moksha, salvation, liberation, nirvana which you are seeking, and this world which we inhabit, this samsara, this body, this mind, this life, these people at home and in the office, they are the same reality. That same Brahman, ultimate reality which we are seeking, and this world which we inhabit, it is the same reality. In the Isha Upanishad, it is said, Ishavasyam idam sarvam yat kincha jagatyam jagat. This world of moving and unmoving things, you have to cover it with the divinity. And Shankaracharya comments there, what do you mean cover it with divinity? He says you have to discover divinity here. It's already there in this world which we inhabit. Mahatma Gandhi had said, if all of Hinduism were to disappear, but just this one line, the first line of the Isha Upanishad remains, then all of Hinduism would remain. So this idea of the one and the many being the same reality. And then Nivedita says with very soaring words, sublime words, she says, it is this doctrine, this teaching, which makes Vivekananda not only the meeting point of the East and the West. You see, it's so important, the meeting point of the East and the West. Look at our civilization now. It's a synthesis of East and West. Doesn't matter whether you're in New York or whether you are in Mumbai or Calcutta. We have a global synthetic civilization now. Vivekananda was a prototype of that, the meeting of the East and the West. And she goes on to say, not only meeting of the East and the West, we all have to be meeting of the East and the West, also meeting of the past and the future. See, Vivekananda not only embodies, India's spiritual past, Vedanta, yoga, bhakti, all of that, but also what is the future of the country? What is the future of the world? What is the future of religion and spirituality? That also you find in Vivekananda. For Vivekananda, there was no difference. Nivedita says there is no difference between work and worship. To labor is to pray. To have and hold is as stern a trust as to quit and renounce. She says this is what makes Vivekananda the great preacher of karma, action, not as divorced from jnana, knowledge, not as divorced from bhakti, devotion, but as expressing knowledge and devotion. So our work, our action in this world expresses our spiritual knowledge, expresses our religious fervor and devotion. She goes on to say, for Vivekananda, the classroom, he literally mentions the schoolroom, and of course today it will be a virtual classroom, the shop floor, the farmyard, she says these are as fit places for meeting of the human and the divine as much as a meditation hall or a temple. So for him, all modes of worship, all modes of work, of creation, all modes of creation, and she mentions all modes of struggle, which means activism. These are as equally spiritually efficacious as yogic meditation. Those are valid, of course they are valid. Meditation and Vedantic, philosophical inquiry, devotion, all of those, but also all the work that we do. So the goal which the yogi had, the goal which Narendranath had when he goes to Sri Ramakrishna and asks, sir, have you seen God? And Sri Ramakrishna says, yes, I have seen God, and so can you. This goal is achievable by prayer, bhakti. It is achievable by meditation, dhyana. It is achievable by knowledge, jnana. It's also achievable by karma, by action. And that includes action, not just rituals in places of worship, but also our daily rituals, the work that you do in the office, work that you're doing. And I saw this cartoon, International Women's Day. So this lady is like Durga. She's standing with one hand, she's stirring the pot, cooking something. Another hand, she is cleaning the room. Another hand, she's typing away on the computer and working from home, I think. Another hand with a spoon, she's feeding a baby. So she's like Durga. That is the condition of the modern woman. Not an easy condition, but this is where we are. And it is certainly far, far better. I think our mothers, grandmothers, and great grandmothers would be very happy to see what has happened. And yes, there are issues. There are issues both in the West, even here in America. It's not a complete revolution yet. There is a second wave feminism. And I mean, there are eminent panels which will, panelists who will talk about these things. And definitely, there are huge issues in India. Hundreds of millions of women, they might be trapped in cycles of poverty. They might be trapped in cycles of even, to some extent, even now, malnourishment. In customs, social and religious customs, which are preventing them from taking advantage of this revolution in women's affairs across the world. So yes, the work has to be completed. But I leave you with this message of Swami Vivekananda, to spiritualize the whole of our life, in meditation, in devotion, in knowledge, but also in service. The worship of God. Today is Shivaratri. So it's Shivaratri today. Sri Ramakrishna's words, Shiva Jnane Jiva Seva. The service of humanity, of sentient beings, in the knowledge that it is Shiva, it's the divinity. The divinity alone appears in all these forms. That is the most powerful form of spiritual practice, and that's something that we can all do. Monks, not monks, men, women, children, elderly, young, no barrier of age, of gender, of sexuality, of race, of occupation. It's a spirituality that is wholesome, inclusive, and universal as the human race. Thank you so much for having me here. I hope I haven't overstepped my time. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Not at all. You have not
Thank you.
overstepped even by a minute. But this discussion could have continued, and I can imagine how much you must have. You've curtailed. There's so much to be said, and we would like to hear so much from you. But thank you, Shamiji. What I gather from this very strongly is the new movement that I hear a lot, which says, I'm spiritual but not religious. And so this movement, which has been very popular parlance with a lot of people that I interact with nowadays, because the ultimate thing of duty and service is what ultimately means, even when we are talking for innovation, enterprise building. And as we were discussing, IGNOU has made so much of we have permeated so much into the innovation activities. We sometimes find our young innovators, they know what they're doing, they're very ambitious about it, but somehow they just don't know what they are here for, what they would like to do with it. And so when they come and in their 20s, and they say that, I'd like to make a lot of money, and so then maybe it's like, what do you do at the age of 40 when you've made a lot of money, and after that what? So if the idea of service was not there anywhere, it would always remain very partial. Thank you so much. And of course, now we will plunge into the practicality, and after this rich philosophy that has been presented by Sarvapriyananda for Swami Vivekananda. I have here with us Professor Soma Sen, School of Social Work, San Jose State University. She holds a dual master's degree in economics and community and regional planning from Iowa State University and a master's degree in social work from the University of Minnesota. She was one of the core team members of the Social Work Education Enhancement Program. The the UNAIDS funded project on social work education in Vietnam. Recently, she served as the co-principal investigator on the European Union funded grant, Building Social Capital by Improving Multicultural Competence in Higher Education and Labor Market, which aimed at promoting and enhancing multicultural competence in higher education. Professor Sen, thank you very much for being with us here, and your inputs after Swamiji's philosophy is going to be very, very apt, because as we try to understand the real life situation of where we are really placed when it comes to when it comes to inclusive implementing inclusive perspective in education.
Okay. Thank you so much. And good morning, everyone, and pranam from California. It's still early here. To Revered Swami Sarvapriyananda Ji Maharaj, my other fellow panelists, and the virtual audience. I'd like to start by thanking Dr. Sujata, Dr. Hazarika, and all the organizers who have, I'm sure, put in a ton of work to organize this on this very special day, and I'm really honored to be a part of this panel. So today what I'm going to talk about is really sort of segues nicely from what Swamiji has been talking about, is about critical self-reflection and entrepreneurship, or in fact, in any work we do, how important that critical self-reflection is. And I'd like to provide a model for this. So my presentation is going to be a little bit theoretical, and then I will apply some of the concepts. As women enter and flourish in various fields and occupy increasingly leadership roles in various arenas, it is important for all to reflect on this concept of gender. So I must add that I teach this model over a class period of 3 hours, and we engage with it for weeks. And I'm going to do this here in like less than 10 minutes. So I'm going to be very brief, and I'll go through the concept quickly. However, I'm happy to answer any questions and respond to any clarifications that is required. So let me start with the premise that as social scientists, particularly applied social sciences, such as my discipline, social work, we believe that there is a bi-directional relationship between the individual and their environment. Now, this is not a novel concept at all. In fact, we borrow this idea from biological sciences and apply it in society. Adaptation to anything actually is important in this context, because when there is an interaction between the self and the others. Therefore, the idea is that as much as we are changed by our interactions in the world with the society and other beings in our environment, we change them too. In that sense, I would say all of us are change agents, whether the change is large or small, visible or not. So we as educators, spiritual leaders, experts in our field, entrepreneurs, students, we change our context as much as the context changes us. So for any successful change agent, therefore, self-awareness is absolutely critical. And such ideas of self-exploration, at least in India, is nothing new or novel. And it is very much grounded in our ancient traditions and practices. And I hope it's not too ancient that we continue to do so, is this idea of Atma Jnana. So the model that I will present here is one that hopefully helps in aiding what I call a critical contextual self-awareness. In fact, this model also allows us to combine what Swami Sarvapriyananda was mentioning about the secular and the spiritual. So it's a very versatile model, can be used in a variety of different ways for social change, understanding society as an analytical tool for understanding society, as well as understanding the self. So I'll talk a little bit about the model, but just to give you a little context, this is a model that we utilize in our School of Social Work at San Jose State University to teach students to work with diverse communities. And it also guides us as educators in our interactions with students, in building collaborations with our research partners, and so on. So here's the model very briefly. As you can see, it's called the transcultural perspective, and it has 5 different domains. So let me quickly elaborate on the fundamental concept of culture and how it is used here before I dive into this model itself and use gender as the analytical framework. Culture basically constitutes the entire ethos of a people. It encompasses norms and traditions, and it gives us really the blueprint for making sense in the world and navigating it. So here, any demographic variable, as education level, biological sex, sexuality, gender, race, ethnicity, religion, any of this can be considered to have a culture of its own, because each of these factors tells us how to be in this world, right? So in the Indian context, being an Indian is a meta culture. However, being a woman in India has its own subculture. Similarly, being poor has its own subculture, and so on. So today, our analytical unit is gender. I will also argue that in giving the blueprint for navigating the world and being a meaning-making instrument, culture also gives us biases. So the idea of transcultural is the idea of how do we transcend these biases and live in a collaborative and harmonious fashion in this world. So from that standpoint, in today's discussion, the question becomes how to transcend gender and the norms and traditions and the biases that come with it. So now what I'll do is I'll quickly go through the various dimensions of this model through a gendered lens. Cultural knowledge. What is this idea? What does this concept mean in the first place? Gender is a social construct. And I guess we all know that. And so different societies, different groups constructed variously and operate in the world based on that definition. For example, if we ask the youth of today the question, they really question the binary conceptualization of gender. According to them, gender is not one or the other, but it's actually a fluid concept. Thus, cultural knowledge about how gender would be to understand how gender is defined and perceived in India, in other societies, and what norms and traditions accompany that definition. So a patriarchal society will therefore have gender norms which would be different than a more, let's say, egalitarian society. The point of cultural knowledge, however, is not to analyze good or bad, not to judge good or bad, but just to understand the broad ideas that are surrounding gender. The next concept I want to talk about is positionality and self-reflexivity. The idea of positionality is that all individuals are granted a social location that is unique to them based on their demographics. So if we can imagine a multidimensional matrix based on gender, sex, religion, sexuality, ethnicity, socioeconomic status, etc., we each occupy a very unique point in it based on all these factors that make us unique, and from which point we then see the world. Thus, each of us sees the world differently. For example, Me as an Indian woman who is educated and lives in the US and who is a professor, I occupy a very specific space in society. The idea then of self-reflexivity is to reflect on how I see the world from that vantage point and how the world sees me. The question then is to ask, how do I understand gender and gender roles based on my social location? I may perceive gender in India in one way and conform to certain ideas, but that might not be the same as how I perceive and act from a gendered position in the United States. Based on such perceptions, I will then act a certain way in India, maybe a different way in the US, and even differently in California because it has a whole culture of its own. Next domain I want to consider is power, privilege, and oppression. In the context of gender, the question would be, what role does gender play in affording an individual with power and privilege or lack thereof? Here I want to say that if we look at gender as a monolithic term, that everyone experiences gender in the exact same way, then typically women will have less privilege in most societies. However, there is a danger of looking at society from a single axis. We as human beings are complex, and there is a danger in telling a single story about us. So I, as a woman, may not have a lot of power or privilege in larger society, but as a woman who is a professor, will definitely have some certain power and privilege. So that's why this social location becomes so important in the understanding of gender, because we all exist at the intersection of various factors that define us, and we are not a single story. Understanding these concepts then leads to cultural competency and respectful partnership. Being culturally competent in this context means grounding our work in the understanding of gender and how it plays out for ourselves and others. And finally, in order to build a respectful partnership with those that we are teaching, we're leading, creating entrepreneurship with, in creating social innovations, we need to not only understand ourselves and others, in this case through a gendered lens, but actually let go of norms and traditions that are possibly harmful for the self and others. This is where I believe the deep philosophical message of Swami Vivekananda, non-duality, is extremely crucial. And that critical self-reflection, contextual self-reflection, is a way to understand that non-dual nature of the world. I will conclude this by saying that this is an integrative model, and all dimensions need to be considered in tandem to understand the whole story of gender, and only then can we transcend gender. Thank you. Dr. Hazarika, you are muted.
You're muted.
I'm so sorry. It just happens so often. Yes, yes. So, Professor Sen, I think that was excellent because of the time constraints, and you've just been so successful in bringing out exactly this whole entire dimension of, diversity and how one reflects on their own status. It was really amazing, and I hope our learners will who have joined us. Actually, a number of learners have joined us besides our even our the IGNOU fraternity as such. And I would like to just put in a word for our learners. I can see a number of comments coming up, but if you could just write your comments and keep them with us, and we promise to share them with the concerned expert, so that when they reply, we can communicate it to them. So don't think that your comments are not going to be answered. So that's there. And yes, of course, coming back to Professor Sen, I suppose this also, to some extent, placing gender in the, in the context of where a woman is placed as an entrepreneur, I mean, or as an innovator, the identities that the woman really believes her to be. So even intersectionality comes here. A woman of a colored innovator from a colored society, a woman from an upper class society, and women, we're talking of all these diversities, and your model actually takes care of it all and brings it to this concept of Shamiji's self-realization. So am I aware when I'm an innovator, or that I'm a woman innovator and I'm doing this? Why am I doing? And have I reflected on my role as an innovator, really? Why am I here as an innovator? Thank you so much. It was just so enlightening. We will now move on to our next. I'm so sorry for the time constraint, these are beautiful presentations coming up. Professor Enna Banerjee. Professor Enna Banerjee?
Yes.
Yes, you're here. Yes, I will just introduce Professor Banerjee here. Professor Enna Banerjee is currently a senior professor in zoology at the University of Calcutta and leads the translational outcomes research group that focuses on immunobiology and regenerative medicine, drug discovery studies, and basic research, including the development and validation of novel drugs, functional food, nutraceuticals, antibody and tissue engineering of stem cells in inflammatory and degenerative diseases, for which her team holds several patents, publications, and grants. She has contributed to transdisciplinary higher education, science, popularization and outreach, and promotes innovation involving science and society. Her initiative, the Conclave, on education and industry, brought together some outstanding minds, innovators who tried to bridge the gap between education and industry. Professor Enna Banerjee, thank you so much for your invaluable time that you are going to share with us here. A phenomenal woman, and as you can say, when we talk about when we talk about this whole thing of women in science and women in decision making, Professor Enna Banerjee has actually proved us all, and she's shown us how she has carried science ahead in her life. Thank you, Professor Banerjee. Can you please take on from here?
Thank you, Shujata. It is always a pleasure. I was lucky enough to be present at your last convocation, and I still have the tulsi plant that I was presented with, watering it regularly. So it's a very broad, sweeping, all-encompassing discussion that is unfolding here, and I will try and sort of comment on what I perceive, talking gender. Today is International Women's Day, and I take this opportunity to congratulate all the women who have come here tonight. It is also Mahashivaratri, so we have a lot of women. They will be fasting and they will be going through all the rituals, which is also a sort of a social gathering. And I would also like you to take a look at at the backdrop of where I'm sitting. I'm not sitting here. I chose this background. My 13-year-old boy who helped me to choose this background because I wanted a very open space behind me. I'm sitting in my children's room because I'm at home, and my children are being very kind to allow me the space to sit here and talk in the webinar. So as a mother, I have very strict instructions not to talk very loudly or not to drop things, which they are prone to do. But at the same time, I would like to draw your attention to where I'm sitting virtually. So there is this big open space behind me, and I think there is a sea also behind me, or a lake. So if we look through the lens of the possibilities, what Soma talked about, or what Shamiji talked about, and how Professor Sharma and Professor Dr. Hazarika set the tone of the whole dialogue, my reality is a small room with a children's bed, and there are books strewn all over and all kinds of things. It's a mess. but I have at my back a nice open space, and therefore I'm able to think that I'm really sitting here and thinking of all the possibilities that nature has endowed us with.
Swamiji's concept of Dashabhuja Dharini. Swamiji's concept of Dashabhuja Dharini.
So yeah, so the Dashabhuja, it can hold the belan in one hand if the children are acting up, and at the same time the belan can be used as an innovative tool if I need to crush my functional foods to yield the nanomaterials that I need for the next step of the way. So I will try and explain a little bit. I'm an immunologist by training, and we work in a translation and outcomes research group. And I'm a woman, and I'm the first woman in the 100th year of my department to be awarded a DSc degree. Now, all these things show that we are kind of late in coming to the party. But once we have arrived, we really, let go of all the inhibitions and enjoy ourselves. So on International Women's Day, I would simply like to stress upon some of the concepts of innovation and creativity and enterprise through my own experiences. One of the things that I'm very, very tempted to say is when Soma mentioned that biologically, so the word biology sort of immediately resonated with me, and it was Shujata who first got me into this, that I'm a science and technology person, and usually science and technology people in the Indian scenario are very, very entitled. So we have the science and technology degree, and we are loath to interacting with people from other disciplines because we are scientists. And she got me very grounded, and I did a bit of a work, and again biologically, which I had never asked myself, the question of gender, as Shujata also mentioned, that how we are posited culturally, it plays a very important role. So when I was looking at the different firsts, the first woman doctor, the first woman educator in Bethune College, Kadambini Ganguly, Ashima Chatterjee, the first woman to be awarded a DSc in Calcutta University, the many firsts, including the ice cream innovator of the ice cream machine, who was a housewife in the US, to Kiran Mojumdar Shaw. So all these, to Margaret Thatcher, to what Swamiji said, Elizabeth II, and I've just finished watching The Crown on Netflix. So the patriarchy is very much there all the time, but at the same time, thanks to Shujata, I came upon some startling discoveries as to how the female gender had evolved. You see, evolution has invested a lot more in the female gender in terms of the complexities of the system than the males. And the males of the species are usually very dispensable. Usually they are very colorful for attracting the females, but they get eaten by the predators more. They are usually short-lived because, in the long, big frame of things, they are probably dispensable. With all due respect to the men out here, no disrespect to you at all, but the fact is that, yes, we have been late in coming to the party. And therefore, some of the things that I'm going to say in the rest of the time that is allotted to me would concentrate on A, the gross enrollment ratio, where there is a disparity, B, women in science and technology, and there are very practical and yet very absurd reasons that are given why women enter less into the science and technology field or continue less because of other things that society has deemed is more important to them. We have also heard about the left-brainedness and the right-brainedness, certain gender roles to enterprise, to creativity, to innovation. And we all know that Marie Curie and her daughter, both the daughters, have broken the myth, how they have worked on a predominantly male-dominated area and came up with fantastic discoveries that range from deep mining to the outermost realms of space. So evolutionarily, we are programmed to be creative. We are innovative as, again, something close to Shujata, the traditional knowledge and the traditional wisdom which is silently being carried forth by the women of society. What Professor Sharma said at the beginning of the lecture, or what Swami Sarvapriyananda said about Elizabeth I's reign, that while the men are doing all these visible roles, the women are quietly at home cooking up something to sustain the family, innovating, I'm sure, when there is poverty, when there is adversity. Still she will hustle up something to keep the home hearth burning, and put the food on the table, and nurse the children, or give solace to the wounded soldier after the return from the battle. So there you have innovation in every form. Traditional knowledge and traditional wisdom, especially now I will talk a little bit about the local positing of science and technology innovations. So when I in Kolkata University, as the roles of teacher have changed, earlier public sector universities will only concentrate on completing the syllabus, on teaching, on research, building human resources. So basically this was our mandate. But as more and more grants started coming in, as there was interdisciplinarity, so science and technology now have to be outcomes based, have to be posited in culturality, as Soma said, solve societal problems. The teacher's role has become very, very visible, more accountable, more is demanded from a university professor than ever before. So once all these factors come in, we usually try to, unfortunately, even after 75 years, we have deeply rooted colonial beliefs that science and technology has to be validated by the West. A lot of the innovation was happening on paper. Academic universities are expected to publish in high impact factor journals, and these impacts now have to be translated to society, is what the government's mandate is, and rightly so. So all these accountability, it was coming into the teacher's portfolio. And as Shujata mentioned, we felt the need to start something called Academia Industry Interface Conclave. Now, why is that? A lot of the students after higher education find themselves without a job. Or find themselves without a job which is commensurate with their qualifications. So there has to be a solution, one way or the other. One of the things that academia is blessed with is that there is really no mandate, what we call the blue sky research. In Bengali, we say Moner Anonde. So however we want, we conduct our research, and the knowledge, for knowledge's sake, is what the university was mandated with. But as the pressures of highly educated, highly skilled individuals not being meaningfully employed mounted, I think a lot of the scenario has changed. One of them is whatever research innovation is coming out of academic labs now needed to be translated. So everything said and done, we are ready to translate how to go about it. So the mandate was on us to tell the students, tell the researchers and teachers that these are the wherewithals of translating your research. You have to look for money, which was never a mandate. We have to look for qualification. We have to look for compliance. So it has to be good laboratory practice or good manufacturing practice. So certain compliances had to be met with. Then there is the question of scaling. From academia, one has to scale at the industry level. One has to formulate how the intellectual learning that has come out of it has to be protected, has to be monetized. So the intellectual property right of the innovated and created technologies had to be put into a certain mold so that it is protected. And then there is the question of enterprise. I'm sure many of the students here and from abroad would support the idea that once we are knowledge makers and we are trained in higher education, we are trained in certain skills, we shouldn't have to go about how we can meaningfully engage ourselves. So right now, I'm not really talking about any difference between men and women. It is simply a question of, if we talk about non-binary genders, let us now talk about the entrepreneurial gender, the entrepreneurial self that we want unfolded here. So one has to talk about, and this is something both the public sector and the private sector, universities, the research organizations and industries are trying to do together, as well as the stakeholders from society, coming up with problems that you need solving, coming up with models. Soma just presented with a model, and whenever we talk about models, we always think of a Western model, as though it is more validated than anything else that one can come up with. So then slowly the idea, and I dare say it has come out of women, again because of the traditional knowledge and the traditional wisdom, and combine with it organized university education, and you come up with something magical, that it has to be a Bengal model or a very local model. Sujata mentioned functional food. For example, we lived in Seattle for a while. After we came back to India, we were getting Washington cherries here. So Washington cherries are good to eat and very high value. But then we have ashpal, which grows not even in an organized way in horticulture, but it grows and it has fantastic antioxidant properties. So being an immunologist, and what COVID has taught us, the culturality is very important. How a community behaves was very important, if you will remember, to break the chain of transmission. So washing of the hands, or taking off your shoes, or whatever. So all these little things, I think gender plays a very important role in finding a solution, a local solution. So the entrepreneurial spirit that I will end this monologue with, since I'm sitting in front of a device and just talking to myself, so is that the creativity is innate in us. The innovation is a need. It's a solution that women have to come up with. You remember the story of Draupadi, and nothing was left when Krishna had come. So she could find that one grain of rice and that little bit of shark that she had cooked for her husband and her mother-in-law. And she could find that out and give it to Govindo, and Govindo made it into many folds. So if that is not innovativeness, and that is not creativity, and then that is not enterprise, then what is it? So I will end with, we practice, today is Mahashivratri, and we worship the god of innovation and technology, Vishwakarma. And then for education, we worship Saraswati. And for solving all our problems, we have Lord Ganesh. And we, of course, have Lokhi, not just in terms of money, but in terms of wealth, of thinking, of spirituality, of celebrating ourselves, and of wellness. With that, I end, and I thank all of you for giving me the opportunity to share my thoughts with you.
Thank you, Professor Banerjee. That was excellent. And once again, the relevance of three categories coming together: woman, science, innovation, everything merged in you as you've come together here. And yes, one important point that you raised was to see that earlier, the changing paradigm has, earlier we were thinking about how does one, after coming out of a formal education, how does one apply those formal education and get a job. Now there is a completely different worldview coming into the picture, and we are thinking about how can one create jobs for others, not about getting a job themselves, but how can we have how can we have employable and skilled people who are not looking for jobs, but who are going to create the next level jobs. So this, now we come again to the we have two extremely accomplished participants out here, and this is where I suppose this is, they are kind of what we want. They have achieved what we want the next generation of society, and what the plans are for our for future of India to be, so that we have more and more entrepreneurs coming up who are not just entrepreneurs in their own right, but they have also generated incomes for other people. They have also generated, they have taken entrepreneurship to a different level. And I thought it was very important for all of us to see how real life journeys have taken places for successful entrepreneurs themselves. So here we have with us two, Mr. Bezbaruah, it's just a coincidence that you come after, Jahnabi Phookan is not any kind of bias against the male gender, but we will still give Miss Jahnabi Phookan the first lead, and let me just introduce her. Ms. Jahnabi Phookan, an entrepreneur for over 3 decades, her companies are encompassed in travel and hospitality, boutique river cruising, small group specialized tours, tea and textiles, all of which empower young people's livelihoods, especially women and their communities. Her mission, sustainable practices and sustainable livelihoods for women's economic upliftment, led to the adoption of 143 villages to empower a microcosm of rural women in her 17 chapters pan-India. Since 2007, Ms. Phookan has been involved in Assam's cottage industry of weaving, when she started the Lahe looms to enable a sustainable livelihood model to rural women by providing quality yarn and collecting their produce from their doorsteps through her band of weavers. In 2011, Jahnavi set up her handloom weaving center next to her wildlife lodge, the Diflu River Lodge in Kaziranga. Lahe looms, under the registered company Lahe Lifestyle, works towards the promotion of Assam's unique weaving vernacular. Lahe denotes slow or organic. For her efforts in this sector, Ms. Phookan has been appointed a member of the Handloom Committee under the Ministry of Textile. So here comes in the significance of, as we've been discussing, women, the livelihood, the inherent wisdom and knowledge that women embody in themselves in terms of indigenous knowledge system. And here is one of the ways of how that knowledge systems could be turned into innovative enterprises. Ms. Phookan, thank you so much. Ms. Jahnavi Phookan, thank you so much for being with us here. And throughout my experience in Assam, I have been well acquainted with all that you have done, your creativity, and it is very, very popular in Assam for the kind of work that you have done. It's a privilege for IGNOU and IGNOU learners and all to be acquainted with your journey and also the opportunities that you can talk for the new generation of educated youth. I will not say women, but it would be educated youth that we would like you to encompass.
Okay. Thank you. I want to first applaud IGNOU for giving us the opportunity to listen to Swami Sarvapriyananda on International Women's Day today from the prism of that Vedanta Society school of thought. It was truly inspirational, Swamiji. I also want to thank IGNOU for this platform today and for the opportunity to be a voice from India's Northeast. You know, this year, the United Nations theme for International Women's Day is Invest in Women, Accelerate Progress. The campaign is Inspire Inclusion. But over 160 years ago, Swami Vivekananda had recognized this and declared that there is no chance for the welfare of the world unless the condition of the women is improved. It is not possible for a bird to fly only on one wing. India today is working towards becoming the third largest economy in the world, but a female workforce participation is still ranked one of the lowest in the world. Today, 81.2% of India's women are engaged in unpaid domestic services, compared to 26.1% of men. Yet this unpaid work is responsible for 7.5% of our GDP, according to an SBI report. Thank you for your very kind introduction of my handloom background, but let me quickly switch to the tourism sector, to which I also belong. So I will also like to speak about the practical example of the tourism industry, for which I belong to for the last 3 decades. Now, tourism employs 1 in every 10 people on earth. Women make up 54% of the workforce of this tourism sector, compared to 39% for the whole economy. Closer home in India, a significant amount of the women's work in the tourism sector remain in the informal sector, such as in the craft-based, the handloom, the handicrafts, food production, homestay industries in the tourist destinations. They're all recognized as working as contributing family workers in family tourism enterprises. So while homestays are usually recognized, registered under the Ministry of Tourism, women's labor is not recognized within these businesses. Therefore, women remain in the informal sector and do not feature in the official statistics of the Labor Department or in the tourism industry sector. Now, this is even more glaring in the Northeast region to which I belong, where women are visibly out in front, from handling domestic chores in the hills, handling forest produce, tilling fields, weaving, to sericulture, to agri and horticulture, to selling in the roadside shops to supplement their income. All these activities are under the umbrella of tourism attractions, to which the foreign tourist or the larger Indian audience love to come and are drawn towards. So my feeling is that my belief is that tourism is in essence the ideal sustainable livelihood model for women, especially in this fragile ecosystem of our region. You know, for us, from our inception as a company, as Jungle Travels India in 1989, and our sister concern, Assam Bengal Navigation Company, in 2003, all morphed into what is called the JTI Group, we have always seen tourism as an opportunity to promote our beautiful region of the Northeast and its unknown destinations, at a time when it was only known for its insurgencies 3 decades ago. And now finally, in this last decade or so, the spotlight is finally on the potential and the power of the Astalakshmi, the 8 states of our region. In 2003, when we had started our first Indo-British joint venture for the Assam Bengal navigation, we became the first to start the long-distance river cruising in the country with our first ship, the ABN Choraido, on the Brahmaputra, and we put India on the international tourism map. We created a demand in the international market, and from 1 ship, we grew to 4. And along the way, we've also taken our people along with us. For us, besides, it's not just a business. It was also what in Swamiji's word would be what we're looking at, enterprise building beyond the physical infrastructure of the ships or the resorts. We feel for us, enterprise building means that we invested in our people. We trained our people. We absorbed all around us, all those around us. And over the years, they have become our biggest assets. We invested in our boutique wildlife lodges, our tourism ships, but the infrastructure was entirely in the authentic architecture of our region. It depicted our way of life, our interdependence on nature and natural habitation. We invested in sustainable practices, in grey water management, in indigenous architecture. We celebrated our heritage, our culture, our cuisine, our way of life. And that is what people from all over the world want to come and see. There are enough 7-star hotels and palaces in the rest of the world. But in us, in the Northeast, all we have is nature and what God has gifted us. So by engaging the communities around our operations, we have empowered the whole communities along with us. And its entire company runs on homegrown talent. And the village women around us, we gave them their just dues for the time and effort. We would organize tours, and I'm talking about 3 decades ago, to the villages to see them at work, at the fields, in the places of worship, without disrupting the natural rhythm of their lives and lifestyles. And then the communities began to thrive on the income generated by these extra activities, which were started by our companies. And now it has become, an economic tool in their hands. So when we take our guests through our river cruises to the villages, and all the women proudly have their handloom products hanging in their gates and being able to sell or sell their farm produce, it makes you feel good that, and you've given them the sense of pride in their activity, and it becomes an economic tool for them. And in our foundation called the ABN Foundation, we've supported conservation, environment, and education efforts for all these communities. In Bengal, where we have the Bengal cruises on the Ganges, we've supported an ABN school. And now our foreign tourists, visitors across the world, come back to volunteer there. And the other, very briefly, I'd like to talk about the other sector, which we first mentioned me about for the Lahey looms, the handloom sector. Tell you a bit about it. Another wonderful, wonderful, sustainable livelihood model for women lies in this sector, especially in the Northeast, especially for women. The handloom sector worldwide, 90% of the handloom comes from India. This sector employs close to 1 crore Indians and is the largest employer after agriculture in our country. The handloom sector engages officially. Statistics are 35 lakh persons in India. And in Assam alone, this state alone has 12.8 lakh weaver households come from India, come from Assam alone. And this is as per the statistics of 2019. So along with Meghalaya and Nagaland, this comprises 18%, 18 lakh weaver households of India come from our Northeast. And it engages more than 95% women weavers and allied workers here, which makes it a very important source of economic empowerment. But 80% of these workers, weavers, work part-time in Assam, supplementing it with agriculture. So indeed, the 8 states of our region is one of the most culturally diverse and rich land inhabited by 220 tribes, even more sub-tribes. There's so many beautiful stories to tell and so many opportunities which are now opening up for them. And let me also briefly touch on the silk production. Very few know that it accounts for 22.8% of the total silk production comes from Northeast region. Our Muga silk, the golden silk of Assam, has a global indicator status, the GI status, and is produced only in Assam. Our region produces 100% of the Muga silk, 90% of the Eri or the Ahimsa silk, 60% of the total oak tussar silk, and 1% of the mulberry silk. And why am I mentioning this? That's because sericulture is another gainful, sustainable livelihood employment for our women, working quietly as part of another household chore. And this is what the Northeast is about. This is what the women of Northeast have always done. And now they are slowly, hopefully, better recognized. And how my work in Lahey looms took off since 2002, when the self-help group in Assam, I think, really galvanized the rural women to come out of their doorsteps and go into the cities, go into towns like Guwahati, where I met my first weaver and started working with her. I would give her the yarn and she would go back to her home and, make the payment right at the doorsteps. Sorry. So from then till 2014, when I could set up my first residential women's weaving center for the migrant worker, the migrant weavers who would go out of home to get that extra income, they could come to my place in Kaziranga. And it feels good to see that it's these women who are now sending a GPay to their husbands back home, who are paying for their children's education, who are supporting their families back home, being able to work full-time with us in Lahey looms, and to be able to not go to the fields for supplementary income, but work there full-time, no household chores, just produce and send money home. And that is what I think we've also done a bit for empowering our women along the way. And if time is short, I think I will just like to say that this has now evolved into an experiential tourism activities. So with tourism, we also have textile tours, and how it's become a very strong vertical. And tourism and handloom, to my mind, are the pillars of the circular economy. and pillars on which women of our region are standing on. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you very much for that real life, example of enlightened entrepreneurship. I think it's phenomenal, the kind of work that you have done. And the objective of this webinar was also to showcase some of the activities that is possible, and to be completely aware of what you need to do sustainably with respect for our environment, make them sustainable, as at the same time pursue innovation and entrepreneurship, for that fantastic work that you have done. I congratulate you on that. So that brings us, that brings us to one of our exceptional presenter out here, Mr. Prabhat Bezbaruah. He is an entrepreneur of great eminence, and what we find in both of them is, the kind of innovative practices and the kind of heights that enterprise has taken under their leadership. So it is a privilege to have you out here, Mr. Prabhat Bezbaruah. He's an alumnus of IIM Calcutta. He joined Bank of America, where he worked in Bombay, Madras, Calcutta, and Manila. He pursued a PhD in finance at the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania, where he taught options and futures to BBA students for a while. Returning to India in 1988, he looked after his family's tea business, and he took up the tea business of BOKAHOLA. Under his leadership, the business has grown from a base of 5 lakh kilos, both organically and through acquisitions, and today it produces around 12 million kilos of black tea. During his tea career, he has been chairman of Assam Tea Planters Association for 2 terms. He has been the director of Assam Tea Corporation Limited, economic advisor to the Chief Minister of Assam, member Board of Governors, Indian Institute of Plantation Management, member Tea Board for 2 terms. He's also the member of SN Menon Committee on Plantation Sector Reforms, member Tea Advisory Committee under Commerce Industry, director Assam Power Distribution Company Limited, chairman Tea Research Association Toklai for 2 terms, and chairman Tea Board India for 2 terms also. We are extremely happy to have you here with us, Mr. Bezbaruah, and I look forward to some of your practical inputs, how your journey that you have personally made as an entrepreneur, the dignity that you have given, and your ideas about how the youth today should think of going for entrepreneurship, rather than, as we said, how to create jobs, and the kind of employment that you have generated. And it would also be very nice if you could share some of the opportunities that probably the tea industry has for innovators and for entrepreneurs who would like to be part of this huge industry. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. But I don't think I deserve that introduction. I would like to actually start by remembering Swami Sarvapriyananda's reminder to us that today is Mahashivaratri, and it is therefore a particularly auspicious International Women's Day. It coincides with Mahashivaratri. Om Namah Shivaya. As far as my journey was concerned, it started purely coincidentally. I didn't intend to come back and take over the family tea estate. I had come back on an annual visit that I make to India, and my father was unwell at that time, and in a way I kind of got stuck here. And I must confess that the kind of empowerment that Jahnabi Phookan talked about, those kind of things don't really happen in the tea industry. We employ 55% of our workforce are women, and we employ very large numbers of people. But the kind of jobs that present themselves in the tea industry are probably not the aspirational kind of jobs that the new generation of women will be looking for. So, as far as women's empowerment or women's employment is concerned, I'm probably the wrong person to have on your panel today, because what we do is, on a large scale we grow tea, we have plantations, and a large
I'm
number of our
sorry.
workers
I'm
are
sorry
women.
to. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'll tell you why you are the right person, because it's not about women empowerment as such. It is also about motivating the youth to go towards innovation and
Yeah, I'll
entrepreneurship.
get to
So
that. I
that way,
mean,
yeah.
let me continue. I'll get to all that. I mean, definitely, there's huge scope in this kind of an industry, which occupies such a large part of the northeastern and North Bengal landscape. So it is definitely an arena where the youth, today's youth, could step in and could bring in a whole lot of innovations and whole lot of new ideas, and the industry is probably starving for new ideas. But I would, if you don't mind, I would like to say a few things about where women stand in society and in the world. I'd like to say a few things, and I'd like you to ponder about those things. I won't take up much of your time, but in a country like Iceland, 52% of the entire workforce is female. In America, 45% is female. Worldwide, 40% is female. In India and Africa, 30% is female. In Pakistan, 25% is female. And in Afghanistan, 18% is female. Uh, you can also sort of tie this in with the gender ratio. When you have less women than men, naturally our genes produce the same number of women as men. If nothing happened, if no interference was done by men, usually by men, you would have the same number of women as men. But in North India, the gender ratio is still less than 800 women to every 1,000 men. So if there's a bias against the girl child, that kind of discrimination will continue throughout the end of that life cycle. So what we need to do is we need to fix that kind of discrimination right at the source. We need to make sure that there is no gender bias in your population statistic. When you do that, that itself will take care of a whole lot of issues that you are having. Secondly, somebody talked about flying on one wing. Jahnabi Phookan, I think, talked about flying on one wing. Any society where women don't play an important role in the economy can't progress. But the converse is not true. When women do play an important role in the economy, it doesn't mean that they have achieved equality. There are matriarchal societies in South India where property is inherited through the women, but it is still the men who rule the roost out there. I won't name the society in case there are some members from that community on in the audience, in the participation. But it doesn't mean that once you achieve economic equality, it doesn't mean that you've achieved social equality. I'd also like to go back to Professor from California. No, sorry, Doctor from Calcutta. Uh, Ma'am, I forget your name, but Doctor from
Ina
Calcutta,
Rai Banerjee, professor from Calcutta
Ila,
University.
Dr.
Ina.
Ina, Dr. Ina. So you
Professor
see,
in
yeah, get it. In various different animals, insects, the females are bigger, larger. The men have very nominal roles to play, but the human male is a little larger than the human female. So I think that while the female is absolutely equal in intellectual ability and in every other aspect, the fact of just brute force has caused this kind of distortion in male-female relationships. And that's my observation. And until we find a way of quelling these primeval kind of instincts in men, there will continue to be violence against women, across the spectrum. As far as women are concerned, and I'm paraphrasing from feminist credo here. Women want equality, they want freedom of choice, they want sexual freedom, and they don't want any stratification, and they don't want any sexual violence. These are the basic tenets of feminism, I think, as Professor would confirm, I think. Am I right? I remember reading this long back, and I kind of jotted it down while I was listening to all of you speak. So, India is a long way from achieving these goals. And, I know that Sujata, you want me to talk about entrepreneurial opportunities in the Northeast. But since this is a conference on, how to, the conference was titled it's a very long title, but I feel that the speakers ahead of me, excepting for Jahnabi Phookan, talked more about women's empowerment and stuff like that. So basically, while listening to them, I got drawn into their arguments, which were so compelling. And, I'm the last speaker anyway. As far as entrepreneurial opportunities are concerned, tea is a huge landscape, and there are a lot of things one can do. And I think the only comment I need to make is that the wholesale price of tea is less than 200 rupees a kilo. And the price that you pay for even the worst quality of tea is 400 rupees a kilo. So in this space lie the entrepreneurial opportunities, huge. And the other opportunity is alternate use of land. The tea industry occupies 300,000 plus hectares of land in Assam and around 150,000 hectares in West Bengal. If that land was put to better use, tea may not be the best possible use for that land. So if the land was put to better use, one would generate a huge amount of extra product, state product, gross state domestic product would shoot up. So we've got to get out of this focus on tea and, concentrate on the best possible use of land, where best is measured by an economic yardstick. So these are the two things that I would urge people to do. This seminar or this webinar is too short for me to go into specifics or go into any major details. But I would like people to get rid of tunnel vision and expand their horizon, both in terms of what you can grow on the land that you're occupying, and how you can add value to the product that is actually being grown on that land. I'm not going to take up any more of your time. I'm the last speaker, I think, and I think everybody wants to wind up also. So thank you very much for this opportunity. It was great hearing all the speakers before me, especially Sarvapriyananda Swamiji. I learned a lot from what he talked about. The fact that one's work, basically, I don't know who said work is worship. Was it Swami Vivekananda? But, that's a fact. I mean, it's a fact. If you can follow those principles in your life, I think a lot of the strife that we go through would be eliminated. Thank you once again for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Mr. Prabhat
Sujata, if you permit me, may I add to what Prabhat Babu just said?
Yes, of course, please.
So, Prabhat Babu, I'm addressing you directly. So this is exactly where we are trying to bring in the academic knowledge base and how it can be translated. So, for example, tea, the various components of tea, what kinds of tea, the cultivars, the geoclimatic position of the tea, that translates into, say, immune effects, increasing its value as a nutraceutical or a functional food. That's number one, which came to mind. And number two, I really appreciate what you just said, that better use of the land. For example, tomorrow I'll be going to Sundarban, and one of the projects of West Bengal government has been to afforest the diminishing mangrove of Sundarban, because Bay of Bengal is encroaching into the land. The salinity shifts are happening. So the traditionally, conventionally, the Sundari trees and the Goran trees which used to grow there no longer are suitable for that land because of the change in the soil scape. So this is exactly where academia would like to interact with society and industry to create value. I just had to add to that. Thank you so much. Thank you, Sujata.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Professor Anna Banerjee. This was, yes, excellent way. If not tea, then what? We have to understand how, which are the yes. We can always continue this in very interesting discussion which is going on. I'm not going to withhold anyone else, because this is for the wider group, but we can always have this discussion, take it to another different level out here. Yes, please, ma'am, Jahnabi ma'am.
I just want to make a point to what Prabhat Bezbaruah said. Excellent points you brought up, Prabhat. But you must also add that this is one of the most highly regulated industries that the tea industry is in East.
Oh yes, it's highly regulated.
So
from
where is the potential to do anything else? As you know, we can't move without the government's comment on.
You are right, but the government has been fairly flexible in recent times.
Okay.
The West Bengal government has allowed 15% of land to be used for alternate uses, and the Assam government has allowed 5% of your land to be used for something else. But even that 5%, we are not doing even 5%. So we are pretty hidebound. The machines that we use were invented about 19 to 95 years back. Any innovation is struck down by the tea tasters as being detrimental to quality without giving it a fair trial. And, I can't say that we haven't been successful, because, I've taken crop up, I've taken our production up many-fold since I joined the business, quite fortuitously, actually. But I'm not, I don't think that I have really, the way you've contributed to the social landscape. I've just stuck to tea. We have grown in tea. We have provided employment to a huge number of women. But, the quality of that employment, I don't see people from other sectors wanting to become a tea garden worker. So I don't think I'm the right sort of role model for an aspiring entrepreneur. And that's just my opinion. I don't think I'm the correct role model, because the industry that I've worked with has its limitations. No doubt it's regulated, and no doubt we can make a lot of excuses for ourselves. But we haven't necessarily striven to make our workplace a very attractive one either.
Yes.
So I would. It's not that I'm being overly self-deprecating, but these are facts. And I thank Sujata for having me on the panel, but I'm not sure whether I'm the best role model for aspiring
that's
entrepreneurs.
Fine. You could be representing one. Yes, I'm Professor Sen is waiting for. I'm just giving you that window. I just want one observation out here. What Mr. Bezbaruah says, it again points to the fact that we need a lot of academia and industry, collaborations from here, because academia is going to give you the inputs through their research, what are the other options besides tea, and what is the climatic factors, and what are the soil factors, where the best kind of production of indigenous products and agricultural products can take place. One for that, and the other, yes, you're so right. Tea industry, I think, has failed completely when it comes to empowerment of women, because when I did my work on the women of the tea industry, I remember it was in such a, it was almost, in 2000, I'm talking about so many years back, the condition, that deplorable condition. And yes, no woman wants to go for tea industry. So I think the onus lies on the industry itself, no, for failing. And you should have, the tea industry could have created different levels of value chain where women could be integrated more. You have your tea garden managers where women get in, but what about the others, like even tasting and other, it's very limited. So you're so correct. I don't doubt the fact that you said you don't have much to say out here, but there's always place for improvement, which you as an entrepreneur could take up. Professor Sen, I'm so sorry, please come in. Just waiting for your intervention. Shoma, please tell us.
No, I just kind of wanted to, hold on one second, I just lost you all. No, I just wanted to sort of bring this back together, and particularly addressing some of the things that, Dr. Bezbaruah has been talking about, because I don't necessarily agree with the idea that you don't have much to contribute, because all the people that talked about today have been talking from the point of view of their social location and their understanding of the world from that social location. So I wanted to say particularly to you that you are coming, the very fact that you're saying that you're not able to contribute enough is from a place of social location, right? You see gender and that you're failing to empower people or women from your social location, which is an extremely important one, because you're thinking that way. The self reflection and self awareness that I've been talking about through that model that's the first part, where you are saying that there's something that's not working right. And that's coming, that in and of itself is an empowering framework. So I would just, please don't think that way, that I do think you have a lot to contribute. And so one of the things that I wanted to just to close out the model that I've been talking about, because theoretical models are theoretical models, but you all gave excellent examples of how your particular social location, your positionality as entrepreneurs, as teachers, as educators, is a very important position to see from why you're looking at gender, why you're looking at, creating these entrepreneurship from that particular point of view. So I wanted to kind of close that out, and also to think about, yes, we understand that there are adversities in certain industries and perhaps it's not suited yet for women, but the idea of these, bridging those gaps also comes through this idea of respectful partnership. So to understand where these other people are coming from in terms of why that industry is not available to a certain sector of people, and then, what is that culture? Why do they think that way? That's the first step to create those kinds of, respectful partnership, because culture is an immensely flexible word. It can be the culture of an organization, to an institution, to a whole field. So not just ethnic culture, not just gender, but the culture of the industry as well. So I just wanted to round that up to say that we're all doing what we are trying to do from our own sort of self-reflective space, and that critical contextual self-reflection is so important. So just wanted to add that.
Thank
Thank you, Professor. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And yes, of course, I think it was very uprightly pointed out. And yes, one does wonder why there's no scope for women in tea at all. There are other industries, and it's happened. I mean, is it from, I don't know, Jahnavi, you are here. Is it because tea is somewhat in a misplaced kind of. You have the whole colonial legacy, capitalism thing out there. At the same time, we are talking the narrative, the dominant narrative that we have here is of inclusion thing. So there's a kind of a contradiction which comes together in my mind, where in one we're talking about an age-old thing. So there'll be a lot of challenges, and what you are doing is exceptional. It shows the path that you can actually move from there to the tea, because you also come from a tea background, and which are the areas, the entire society so well, and you've made these interventions into textiles, you've made in tourism, and you made in all these areas. Yes, and even tea for that matter can have these kind of tea tourism, ecologically friendly thing. And why not? Why not? Why not? It's like, thank you so much. And would you like to say something? Yes, Jahnabi. Yeah.
I'd like to mention, point out here that the new generation of tea garden owners are taking to e-commerce in a big way. We have these young owners who are now popularizing their tea and, adding in new ingredients like bubble tea, green tea, and a whole lot of other things that we are not familiar with. But yes, they're approaching it in a very interesting way, a novel way. And then the growth of the small tea growers, a huge phenomenon which has changed the economic landscape of our region. And
So
that
the small tea growers, women, as Prabhat you said, small tea growers can also be the self-help groups where women join as a cooperative.
That's what they're doing.
Does it work?
No. There are hardly any women small tea growers.
I mean, let us talk about the one or two women that we have. But Prabhat, look at the e-commerce sites that these young people have got into and how they're trying to
that's the first thing that you said, and I didn't say that you were wrong. But as far as the small tea growers are concerned, there are hardly any women. There are about 3 women who are into tea cultivation in a small scale. Yeah.
But it's a start, Prabhat.
Maybe the education. I think I'm again coming back to the scenario.
They're giving
there are
gardens a run for the money.
there are a lot of good things about tea garden dynamics. I mean, I don't think sexual violence is endemic as far as the tea gardens are concerned. It is not. When women take loans, they're much better credit risks than men. Much better. The Provident Fund Department of the Government of Assam lends money to the workers. It's their own money. So it's no big deal that it's no charity that we are doing as the owners. So they lend money to the members, and the recovery rates from the women are far better than that from men. And the tea garden workers have their own homesteads. So there are some people who are encouraging them to take up mushroom farming, and they are doing mushroom farming. There are some women who keep a cow or two in their little homestead. So the women are doing things, but yet all in all, it's not a very attractive workplace. And the industry, as I said, is hidebound. There are hardly any women managers. Sujata, you talked about women managers. There are about 7 or 8 women managers in the entire industry. Okay.
And even at different levels. I mean, I'm not just talking at the managerial level, but even in different levels, as you said, starting from the tea garden worker woman to, if you scale them up till the manager level, in different kind of value chain, like being in different value chains, it's remarkably less. But have you explored more of industry, academia partnership in terms of research to come up more on these areas? What about
exactly what I was thinking?
Yeah,
Sujata,
you have done it. I was looking at you that time. Yes.
Let me just elaborate this a bit. You know of pan, right? Piper Betley Linnaeus. So pan is the green gold, but it is cultivated in boroughes. It is not agriculture. It is horticulture. There are 8 to 9 different cultivars. It is a very well kept secret how the grafting is done, and there are various cultivars. However, generally taken together, pan is known to create ulcers in the mouth, or gum cancers, or halitosis, something. So research and development, what Sujata says, plays a very important part, in the sense that, see, pan, we take pan for its flavor and aroma. We are concerned about the mutagenicity and the carcinogenicity of pan, which puts some roadblocks in their entry in certain countries, although the flavor and aroma of pan cannot be replicated by anything else because of the bad name that it causes, this and that. So science and technology and in-depth research has now revealed that certain cultivars grown with certain agronomical methods in certain geoclimatic areas sequester bioactive compounds which are highly antioxidative. So highly antioxidative compounds which are not water soluble. So we eat it with our mouth and the saliva mixes with it, which is a polar compound. So only water soluble compounds, bioactive compounds, get assimilated into our system. The rest is thrown out by the body. So the rest of the compounds, say through various non-polar compounds, solvents such as ethanol or PET ether, those the body cannot take because water is the only thing that we have. We chew on the mesophyll, the leaf. What research and development has revealed are that there are various fractions in the various districts, which means the geoclimate and the agronomy, and the absolutely different array of medicinal compounds that are sequestered by the pan. So now the Banerjee, who are the traditional pan cultivators, who are simply selling a pan for say 2 rupees for chewing, for whatever, can, through the extraction of R&D, make various products. And we are working with the governments under something called Technology Development and Adaptation Center. And there is a women's cell which is specifically designed for women-centric work, because much of this, they have the borage of the pan, which is like a small greenhouse where they cultivate it. So all these other fractions which were hitherto not explored now can be used for making various products. For example, face masks or toothpastes or mouth fresheners. So various kinds of things. So we are lifting the blockage from trade and commerce because it is not welcomed in certain countries. For example, the Middle East does not allow export of pan because pan has a bad name. But pan as a general piper betle has its cultivar. So genomically they are similar, but epigenetically they are different. So these are very technical terms I'm using. So boils down to what Sujata was saying, that what was the domain of the knowledge creators in universities, and we would publish a paper which would go to some technical erudite journal, and then nobody else will bother about it, will now be translated to uplift such communities of people who will have other things, value addition of the pan, which earlier was being sold for 2 rupees only for chewing. Now so many possibilities are opening up.
Absolutely correct. I think that is such a wonderful note, and strengthening the industry and the education, interface. That is, and that's why I thought, Professor Banerjee, your forum was so well timed at that time, just after NEP had implemented innovation and thing, and you just brought all of them together to have a discussion. Most of the time, industry doesn't know what industry is doing. They need people. They are not getting employable, skilled people. At the same time, education or the universities are producing thousands of graduates and skill, which is not being, there is no place to incorporate them or absorb them. So these are some
Absolutely.
of the.
So the academia to industry part 3, we are planning to have a veritable buyer-seller meet. So the academics will be sitting there explaining what they are doing, and the industry will come and say, okay, we can do with this. Or the industry will put forward questions that, okay, we need troubleshooting, and somebody will be working. And then we can have these pools of people who can go and solve these problems from these highly skilled people, not just the freshly minted graduates and postgraduates and PhDs and postdocs, but also post-retirement. You see, at 60, people are retiring. These are highly skilled individuals with another 20 years to them. So that kind of a churning has to happen, where many of the problems in the academic field are not seeing the light of the day, now has to happen through a dialogue.
Which is such a fantastic note to end this discussion. Is there, yes, because I think in that positive note, and I think you are taking this up, is it? Enadi, you're going to take this,
Yeah, June.
take the step
June.
beyond this. The third step, the third level of the education and industry conclave.
Yes.
And so if there's anything else that, I'm loving this thing. The forum is there. There's no problem. We don't need to go. We can keep discussing this as, till when. And it's been such a fruitful discussion, just as as we had envisaged, and we've been talking about it, also discussing with all of you at some point of time. And thank you so much for supporting this whole initiative. And I hope our learners, because on IGNOU's behalf, what we can say is, the infrastructure of outreach is enormous. So we need quality to get absorbed in IGNOU, so that we can outreach it, and we can use our infrastructure through interinstitutional collaboration, through networking of of experts. We can use our platform to outreach these efforts and these initiatives. Thank you very much, each one of you. Professor Sen, Prof. Soma, thank you so much. Enadi, thank you so much. Manuba, thank you so much. And Prabhat, if you are there, thank you very much for participating and giving us, although it was the end, you sounded a little more positive. So that was a better way of, leaving. And yes, and Sarvapriyananda, Shamiji, I think, thank you so much for your guidance. You set the note of this discussion, and we carried it forward. And Professor Sharma, thank you very much for being with us on behalf of IGNOU and informing everyone about the phenomenal steps that are being taken by IGNOU and the way we are participating in India's nation building through education. Thank you all so much. Very good night, and see you all.
Thank you. Pleasure.
Thank you. Good night.
Namaskar.
Goodbye.
Good night. Thank you,
Bye-bye.
all
Thank you.
all the coordinators and all
Thank
our
you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for joining, and it was a pleasure. I could see all of you were there. We had an outstanding outreach of about 170 participants at one point of time. So I think we've done well. And as I was telling our experts, that IGNOU has that capacity and the infrastructure to move for outreach, and in a single platform like that, we had the presence of so many educationists out here, all our coordinators. And it is also in Facebook Live, and it will be it will be in all the social media platforms, all these discussions and all the decisions that we have taken. And on a positive note of more of strengthening our industry and academia, I think this is a very important step. University of Calcutta has been a stalwart in doing that, and the other universities also should take this up as as an effort there. Thank you so much. Good night, all of you.
Thank you.
Good night. Good night to all of you. Thank you. Thank you, madam.
Night.
Thank you so much.
Good night. Good night.
Night.
Good night to Dr. Banerjee and others also. Madam also. Good night.